So today we're going to be doing cuts, grazes and wounds, the top homeopathic and herbal remedies. So when we look at cuts, grazes and wounds, homeopathy is so effective. Again, these are remedies that you can have in your remedy kit, as we discussed last time in the last video, or it's maybe just individual remedies you're going to be buying over the counter from your local health food store or from the homeopathic pharmacies. And this can be remedies, homeopathic remedies, or you can get creams as well. So this is useful to have at home so you can use these remedies when you need them if there's a cut, graze or wound. So when you're looking at wounds, there's all different types of wounds. So we've got abrasions, which often involves the upper layer of the skin, like a scrape or a graze. We're looking at laceration, which is when a sharp object that leaves an uneven cut and sometimes is tearing, and you can sometimes see that, say for example, with a dog bite or it tears. You're looking at an incision, which is often made by a knife, or it's often quite clean, like from surgery, for example, or you may cut yourself with a knife, or with a puncture wound, which can be caused by an object that pierces the skin and either continues straight through or comes out the way it entered. So it's like a puncture wound. It goes in and goes out, or it can go all the way through, like if you stood in a nail and it went through your foot. So it's really important to know what these different types of wounds are. Now, with deeper cuts and lacerations, there's a chance that bacteria can enter the body, which can cause infection. And with any serious cut, any serious laceration, any serious wound, it needs to be looked at by a qualified practitioner. You need to seek medical help if you need to, but there's nothing stopping you taking the remedies whilst you're getting that help. Okay, so really useful to know. So let's look at some of the homeopathic remedies that are good for cuts and wounds and grazes. So the first remedy, Arnica. Again, this is such a universal remedy. Any sort of traumatic injury, whether it's recent or a while ago, always give Arnica. And as we know, with Arnica, the person who's got a bad wound or has a wound or a cut will say, I'm okay, I'm all right, and will avoid attention. They don't want any attention. It's like, no, I'm okay, I'm all right, I'm okay, I'm all right, and will sort of hide the wound. Well, often they could be in shock. So it's always good to give people a dose of Arnica. It's a universal remedy for any sort of trauma, injury, cut, wound, graze, they've fallen off the bike. Always give them Arnica. And also you can take it before or after surgery. So that could be surgery when you've had an operation, minor, major operation, or after like a dental extraction, where there's a wound. There may have an extraction, a tooth being removed, and there's left a wound. So again, Arnica is for the shock of that, because even though you've had anesthetic and you can't feel it extracted, you can certainly feel it often when it wears off, but the body sees it as a shock. It sees it as a trauma. So it often can leave a wound. So again, Arnica would be great for that. And often, as you know, with Arnica, the keynote, they've got this sore and bruise feeling, okay? And they don't like to be touched, as I said, or examined. They sort of shy away from that. They don't really want you to look at it and have kind of a fear of that, a fear of touch. But remember, we're talking about Arnica in homeopathic potency here. If you're going to use Arnica cream, never use Arnica cream on an open wound. I'll repeat that. Do not put Arnica cream on an open wound. So if you buy the cream, it will say that on the side of the cream, not to use it on an open wound. There's other creams you can use, but you do not put Arnica cream on an open wound. So first remedy, Arnica. Second, we're going to talk about is Calendula. Calendula cream. Should have this. Again, every house should have this. It's good to use it in a homeopathic tincture, in herbal tincture, especially if it's warm rather than cool and diluted in warm water, and it promotes healing. It reduces inflammation, stops and clears infection. Great to have in the first aid box. So you should have your homeopathic first aid box. But you've got to make sure the cut is clean, all debris removed, as calendula can cause healing very quickly, and it may heal over any dirt. So you've got to make sure you clean the wound and get rid of any dirt or any foreign bodies. So if you're going to use the tincture, and you can buy calendula tincture, you put 10 to 15 drops in a small glass of cooled, boiled, sterile water for bathing and cleaning the wound. If it stings, it can be diluted more, so you can add more water. It's useful, very useful after childbirth. There's been any tearing or any surgery like episiotomy. and you can use it to wash the perineum. And again, the rate of healing with this after childbirth is fantastic. Again, as I mentioned before, dentistry. This can be sore after extractions, so you may give an arnica, or after any dental work, you've given arnica, or you can use it as a mouthwash. Dilute the calendula tincture into some water and use it 2 or 3 times a day as a mouthwash. It is amazing for any sort of issues after dental work. Even when you've gone to the dentist and you've just had seen the hygienist and they're cleaning the teeth. Sometimes the gums can feel really sore underneath. But any wound, like I said, any extraction, if there was any wound, absolutely great. Next remedy, Hypericum. Now, the Hypericum, or St. John's wort, is really good for any clean cuts from surgery, people have had an operation, or knives, they've cut themselves with a knife, or any lacerations. And remember, Hypericum is for if there's any rich area of nerves that are very, very sensitive to touch. And we call this the arnica of the nerves. Okay, Hypericum is the arnica of the nerves. They have sharp shooting pains from the wound, which are extremely painful. I can't overemphasize how painful Hypericum wounds are. Okay, and it's sometimes almost, you look at the wound, but the pain they're experiencing seems to be out of a proportion with the wound. But it's because it's in an area where there's a lot of rich nerve, it's nerve rich, lots of nerves are there. So sharp shooting pains, these are the keynotes for Hypericum from the wound, which often they'll radiate out, they'll be shooting out. This is good for puncture wounds, or where they've crushed or lacerated fingers, so you've trapped them in the door. This happens a lot with kids when they slam the door and they trap the fingers, especially the fingertips, which again, very, very painful. It's specific for these fingertips. Good to give after surgery in any surgical procedures, particular where there's been puncture wounds. For example, anything affecting the spine, like an epidural or any lumbar punctures. Okay, really good. But again, any surgery where it's in an area where there's lots of nerves. It could be in the genitalia region, anywhere there. With Hypericum, worse touch, worse jarring, worse for cold, better for rubbing. So Hypericum, really lovely picture there of St. John's wort. It grows in most people's gardens. Such a great, great remedy. So Hypericum and Calendula, you can have it combined as a cream. Now, this is made from the herbal preparation of Calendula, which is marigold, and Hypericum, which is St. John's wort. And this is the herbal preparation. But again, combined as a cream, it is absolutely great. Okay, so this is good for stinging and cutting pains, any cuts, abrasions, wounds, always good to have. And it really promotes healing and is antiseptic, which is the Calendula side, and plus it's pain relieving, which is the Hypericum side. So Hyper-Cal is excellent, excellent, excellent cream to use. And again, I would say to all of you, you should all have this in the home. Hyper-Cal. Next remedy, Ledum. So again, this is for puncture wounds or any painful wounds where there's stinging pains and the pains travel upwards. Okay, and this is a #1 remedy for puncture wounds from animal bites. Now, these are the bites. You can see a picture of the cat here. Very sharp teeth that puncture. They go in and go out. Whereas often a dog can tear if it bites. This is where it goes in and it goes out. And you can see the cat's teeth are very, very sharp. So this is where the teeth penetrate deeply. Also think of puncture wounds from injections, stepping on a nail. You can step on a rusty nail. You know, people are working, step on a rusty, goes right into the foot, sometimes out the other side. And could be puncture wound from a splinter. Now, the thing about Ledum is the wounded part feels cold to touch. And it can look purple and it can look puffy. But the keynote of this strange, rare, peculiar symptom of Ledum is that even though it feels cold, they want cold application. They want ice on it. Where do you think if it felt cold, they'd want heat? No, they want ice. Keynote of Ledum. This is how you differentiate between the remedies. And this is good for penetration wounds, especially of the hands, of the feet. Again, really, really specific for those areas. As we said, better for cold applications, worse warm applications. They don't want warmth on it, they want cold. Worse for covering the affected part, so you may want to bandage it up. They don't want it bandaged. They said, no, I don't want anything on it. And worse at night. So again, you can see those 3 pictures there. the needle, the injection, stepping on a nail, an animal bite like a cat, for example, where there's been a very sharp puncture wound. So that's Ledum. And you'll know when we do all these different videos that we now have, and you'll see them, you'll say these remedies will come up again and again, all different uses. And it's what we call polycrest remedies. They have many, many uses. And this is why it's so important to have some of these major remedies, because you can use them for so many different things. And if you look in the Home Prescriber, my Home Prescriber book, a lot of these remedies come up again and again and again, but for all different types of issues. Next remedy, Staphysagria. Now this, you can see in the picture here, the lady has cut herself with a knife. This is intense pain from any clean cuts, like a knife, or wounds. And often, if they've got a laceration, it become inflamed. Good for incisions, stab wounds, or cuts. So this is from sharp cutting instruments, such as a knife, but also glass or metal. I've seen it with metal when people have cut themselves like on a can. Any areas, again, which is very, very sensitive to skin, because Staphysagria is extremely sensitive. Again, a big remedy to use after surgery when the pain remains. And often you can have feelings of anger, humiliation after an operation, or again, dental surgery or a wound, and they feel like they've been abused. They feel like they're being violated. So this could be anything where that they feel humiliated, abused, or anger since having the cut or the wound, and whoever may have caused that. It could be a doctor, it could be the dentist, it could have been somebody, did it by accident, but, end up cutting them. They'd be really angry about it. Again, a great remedy for episiotomy. Any cuts to the perineum, then you could then use the calendula tincture diluted to bathe the affected area, but you would give Staphysagria internally as a remedy in order to help that. Again, great remedy for pain after extraction of teeth. When people have had the teeth pulled out, taken out, again, the body doesn't see it as a good thing. They've had anesthetic, but for the body, somebody's just gone in with some pliers and pulled the tooth out of the jaw. Now, again, the body feels like it's been attacked. Again, feels violated. So this could be people who feel really angry after that, or feel humiliated, or feel abused after it. They feel this sense of they've been abused almost. Worse for cold, worse for touch, better for warmth, better for rest. Okay, so worse cold, worse touch, better for warmth, better than rest. Opposite to what we said about Ledum. Better for cold, Ledum. Worse for warmth. So this again, how you differentiate between these remedies. So often we can look at the mental and emotional state as well as the physical state as well. Next thing to use, this is an old herbal thing, but this is so good. I've used it many, many times, or suggested for people to use it many times. Use it on my own kids, for example, as well. Is turmeric. I'm sure many of you use turmeric. It's been used for thousands of years as both, to put into food as a spice, but also as use. It's got so many uses to it, and it's shown that possesses significant anti-inflammatory and antioxidant, anticoagulant, and anti-ineffective effects. So it's such a good all-rounder, and it's got significant wound healing properties, and it acts on various stages of the natural wound healing process to hasten healing. If you just type in turmeric into Google, you'll come up with all this research that's been done on it. Some tremendous research showing how it helps in the wound healing process. Now, to make a paste with the turmeric, get 1 or 2 teaspoons of ground turmeric, mix it with a little bit of water to make a thick paste. A bit like in the video when I talked about using bicarbonate of soda for stings as well. But you make a paste with this, with turmeric, a little bit of water and a paste, and gently put it onto the wound. And once you've applied it to the covered area, you can then bandage over the wound and let it sit for 12 hours or 24 hours. And you can do this for 3 days. Now, again, I would advise to clean the wound first, like with the calendula wash, as we talked about previously, making sure there's no dirt in there, just clean it all out. But then you could apply the turmeric as well as a paste. Very, very effective for wound healing. Yes, it will stain your skin yellow. That's what turmeric does. But I've seen some incredible things. I remember this one little girl, she had a graze she fell over and grazed all her face down here. Applied turmeric, and honestly, within a couple of days, it was almost completely healed. It was amazing to see. So turmeric, please do not forget these things that are in our kitchen cupboards. We talked about turmeric. We've talked about bicarbonate of soda. Cayenne pepper is another one, great for bleeding. If somebody gets a wound and bleeding, you can apply cayenne pepper to it, and it will stop the bleeding straight away. So let's look about a wound. If it continues on, it can often sometimes get infected, as we talked about earlier on. So let's look at this. There's a little infected finger from a cat bite. So the first remedy to think of, where there's an infection, then there's like a buildup of yellow pus, and that pus can smell fetid or like old cheese. And just like this finger here, you can see it's all coming to a head. Then think of Hepar sulf. So this is after it's got inflamed, it's like got all red, and then the pus starts to appear. It's what we call the second stage of suppuration. Then think of Hepar sulf. And with this pus formation, it can be throbbing, splinter-like pain. Remember, that's a keynote for Hepar sulf. They have splinter-like pains, redness, swelling or tenderness. Remember, incredibly painful to touch with Hepar sulf. It would be very, very painful. Then if it's like that, just like this picture here, think about giving Hepar sulf. Okay? Great remedy. We'll talk about potency and frequency at the end of this. Great remedy. Great picture there. Second remedy to think of is a remedy called calc sulf. You can buy this in homeopathic potency or as what we call a tissue salt, cell salt, like a 6x or 12x. This is good for cuts and wounds which are slow to heal. So this is where it's inflamed, but now it's discharging pus. So with Hepar, there wasn't discharging. Here it's starting to discharge. It's got a vent. And the pus is like thick, yellow, lumpy, and bloody. I was going to find a picture like that, but I thought it might be a bit too disgusting. It'll be discharging pus. It should be thick, yellow, lumpy, and bloody. It'll be like blood in it as well. A little bit of blood. So this is really good for suppuration. And this is worse for touch, worse for cold, worse for heat of the room, better open air, better for bathing, better for local applied heat. So the worse for the heat of the room, too hot, but actually applied heat onto the wound itself or onto the whatever is infected, they feel better for that. So this is the next stage after Hepar sulf. So this is a deeper Hepar sulf, not as sensitive to air or touch like Hepar sulfurs. As we know, they're very, very sensitive, but it has a deeper action in these where the wound has found a vent to discharge. Okay, where it's discharging. So think of calc sulf. It's a great little remedy to use. People forget calc sulf, but it's really very, very good. Next remedy here is lachesis. So this is good for puncture wounds, especially animal bites. So this is for small wounds that bleed a great deal. Okay, so lachesis is good for any sort of like lot of excessive bleeding. It's using more chronic things for more like hemorrhages. But this is where it's bleeding a lot, the wound. And you'll find there's a bluish, purplish appearance and mottled skin around the wound. So this is for infected wounds with burning pains, worse for heat. Also think of this with wounds like bed sores or ulcers, where people they haven't moved properly, they haven't been turned over, or ulcers because of poor circulation. So this is a good remedy for that, with the wound of the ulcer, and around it is purplish, mottled, bluish. Very hypersensitive skin to any sort of touch or any sort of constriction. Okay, this is a keynote for lachesis. Do not like to be constricted at all. They're worse for hot weather, worse for pressure of the clothes. So they're trying to, undo the clothes. They want the clothes to be loose because it feels constricted. Better for discharges. So if it's discharging, they feel better. Better for open air. Better for warm applications to the actual area. And I said, better loosening the clothes. I feel a lot better for that. So again, you think of this where small wounds that bleed a lot, but also this purplish, bluish appearance, which can be around, for example, like an ulcer, a leg ulcer or something like that. And you may see this more in elderly people. Next remedy is nitric acid. So this remedy is for very painful, slow healing wounds. Again, we're talking about leg ulcers or wounds that just don't seem to heal. There seems to be a lack of vitality, okay? A lack of vitality. So when wounds that don't heal, there can be like a dirty green discharge, which is offensive. The ulcers can look, if they have an ulcer like a leg ulcer, can look like raw flesh, bleed easily, very painful. Now, a lot of time these people will be taken care of. They'll be having primary care where the wound's being looked after and washed by maybe a district nurse or in the local health centre, wherever they're getting treatment. But this is something that you could take internally, which can help that. And they have splinter-like pains. Again, a bit like Hep or Sulf, splinter-like pains. But they have a burning pain. Now, the thing about Nitrac, this remedy, they are so painful. The more painful it is, the more nitric acid it is, the more Nitrac it is as a remedy. Very sensitive, can bleed very easily, the wound. It's trying to heal, but it's bleeding a little bit, and it can be like a dark blood, and it's like not quite really healing very well. Can be extremely negative, very angry, can be very irritable, worse for touch, worse for cold air, worse for heat, and worse for jarring, if you suddenly jar them. But this incredibly sensitive, very painful types of wounds. But again, you may see this in more elderly people, but also you'll see it, these people often, they're being treated, the wounds are being dressed every day. This is something to take as a remedy, which will help with the vital force. So I mentioned before about prescribing. So again, we're in acute situations here. Now you can get 6C, which you may find over the counter at local health food stores or the homeopathic pharmacy. Or 30C, you can get hold of at health food stores or in a remedy kit. Again, the remedy is the most important thing. Now in acute, say somebody has cut themselves, you can give that remedy once every 50 minutes for 3 or 4 doses until the symptoms improve. And then you can maybe reduce it to twice a day until it gets better. But again, you're looking for the keynotes of the remedy or the 3-legged stool. Okay, so you don't need every single part of the keynotes that I've talked about, but you need at least 3 really good keynotes in order to prescribe. But the more that you do it, the more you get better at it, the more you can differentiate between which remedy to give. And what I said, if you're down to 2 remedies, just give one. Just try one. It will have an effect. But if symptoms persist, obviously, I said this at the very beginning, you've got to seek the help of a qualified practitioner. Again, if it's a very serious laceration, serious wounds that was cut, please go to the emergency room, go to A&E. You need to be looked at. Okay, so I hope you found that useful. And again, please use these remedies, because the more that you do use them, the more that you can see them work and how effective they are, and you'll just automatically go to them. And you'll just know what to give. And if all the PowerPoint presentation for today, you can download it. The link will be on the Facebook page. And just go back through it again. Go back through it again. Learn how to use it. As I said before, a lot of this stuff is in my Home Prescriber book, but I've added to it in these presentations as well. So please just use it and try it. And then you can see it working and you'll learn the remedies. And the remedies become like learning songs. You learn the songs, you learn the keynotes of the song. And then you'll just, the more that you get empowered to use it, the more that you will see how great homeopathy is. And until the next time, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. And I will see you soon. Bye-bye.